It's also pride that causes us to feel that we must always give our opinion about things that are actually none of our business. Do you know there's 3 scriptures, just as plain as they can be, that tell us to mind our own business? So, how many of you kind of like to get into other people's business? Come on, I don't want one of these down here things. How many of you like, you know? Dave and I used to live next door to a single man that owned a big house. And we just couldn't figure out why this single guy wanted a house with 4 bedrooms in it. It's like, you know, what a waste of money. Now, keep in mind, we didn't even know this guy's first name. But one day we're driving out, and so Dave or I said, well, maybe he did it for an investment. And then the other one said, well, but he could have found a lot better investments than that because he's got to take care of this big place. And so we spent maybe 10 minutes planning this guy's financial future, and we didn't even know his name. Can I tell you that in Romans 14, the Bible says that every man will give an account of himself. God's not going to ask you about anybody else, not going to ask you about your husband, not going to ask you about your kids, your friends. He's going to ask you about you. And another way we can keep a lot of stress out of our life. Now, come on. Another way we can keep a lot of stress out of our life is just by staying out of other people's business. You don't even need to have an opinion where you don't have any responsibility. Not even an opinion. Well, I think. Well, nobody cares what you think. And nobody wants to know what you think. The only time we really should give an opinion is if it's asked for. And then we need to do it carefully. 2 Thessalonians 3:11, for we hear that some among you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but being busybodies. 1 Thessalonians 4:11, and to aspire to live quietly and to mind your own affairs and to work with your own hands. And 1 Peter 4:15, but let none of you suffer as a murderer or a thief or an evildoer or as a meddler. You know what I think is interesting about that? A meddler is in a list with murderer, thief, and evildoer. I just noticed it today. I thought, wow, those are heavy hitters. You know, most of us wouldn't think that being a little nosy was a problem. But, I mean, it's right up there with a bunch of serious stuff. Sometimes I have to say to myself, Joyce, it's none of your business, it's none of your business, it's none of your business. Come on. Anybody besides me ever have a problem with this? Now, this doesn't mean we never correct a person who's in sin or try to help them in any way, but there's a difference in genuinely trying to help somebody and trying to get into their business when you don't need to. Great example in John 21, beginning in verse 18. This is Jesus talking to Peter. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. So he's given Peter the heads up that things are going to be a little more difficult for him in life now than they have been. And I don't think that he was talking about young in years. I think he was talking about when you were younger in the Lord. And you know, when you're younger in the Lord, to be honest, you do pretty much just do what you want to do and pray for God to bless it. And a lot of times he does for a period of time because he's establishing a father-child loving relationship with you. But just like when our own children grow up, we don't want to have to keep taking care of them all the time. We want a transition to come at some point where they say, Mom, Dad, what can I do for you? And so Jesus is saying, when you were young, you pretty much did what you wanted to, but things are going to change now, and I'm going to lead you into some things that may not be the most fun for you, but it's what I need. And in verse 19, it says, this he said to show by what kind of death he was going to glorify God. You know, Peter was crucified upside down on a cross. And then after saying that, he just said to him, follow me. Now, Peter just needed at that point to say, yes, Lord. But Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved. That happened to be John. John wrote the book of John, and he referred to himself over and over as, I am the disciple whom Jesus loved. Now, I know Peter's personality well enough to know that that just got all over him. Like, yeah, you're the disciple whom Jesus loves. I mean, you know, these were people just like we are. I mean, it's even a little bit aggravating to me to hear John say that, so I can imagine how Peter felt about it. And I mean, these guys had problems, just like we would have problems if we were in a group. They were jealous of each other. They competed with each other. And I think that knowing Peter's personality, that he probably just had a hard time with all the ooey gooey, you know, John laid on Jesus' breast at dinner, and they just had this great loving relationship. And you know, Peter always wanted to run the show. So he's gotten the bad news that things are going to be a little hard for him toward the end. He sees John, and he says, when Peter saw him, he said, Jesus, what about this man? What's going to happen to him? Well, you know, we're not really good at it if we're having a hard time and everybody else is having a good old time. Eh? At least if we're going to be miserable, we'd like some of our friends to be miserable with us. And Jesus said, verse 22, if it's my will that he remains until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. So Jesus just told Peter, mind your own business. Now think about it for a minute. We're having a problem. We've been having a problem for a long time. Maybe you're a single girl and you haven't had a date in 12 years. And your friend, who's not nearly as attractive as you are in your opinion, she just can't beat the guys off with a stick. They're just after her all the time. And so you don't like it. And you love her with the love of the Lord, but you don't really like her. How many of you know about that? I love you with the love of the Lord. I can't stand you, but I love you with the love of the Lord. See? And all you have to do, you don't have to try to figure out why you haven't had a date and she has. You have to tell God how unfair it is. You just have to remember that God has a personalized, individualized, perfect plan for each one of us. And we might as well just quit looking at other people trying to figure out why we don't have what they have. Pastors can get into the same thing. Get jealous of another pastor because he's got a bigger church, and you've got this and you've got that. Yeah, you know. You know, anybody that's successful is always going to have a certain amount of people that aren't going to like him. And you know why? Jealousy. Just plain jealousy. So I'm just going to say it the sweetest, kindest, nicest way that I know how to. Mind your own business.
We hope you enjoyed this teaching. To get more from Joyce, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing.